Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Scenic View podcast. I am Jonathan Owens here with Ardis Watkins and Sammy Cline. It's a beautiful day. It's almost 80 degrees today, right? We don't need to be cooped up inside all day, so let's get to it. So, is winter over, y'all?
I want it to be.
Seems like it. I mean, you know how North Carolina, you know what we go through.
My dad said it may be getting cold next week again, so
yeah, but not cold.
Yeah.
Just kind of.
So let's dive right into this week's episode, and I guess we should start with the election that we talked about in length last week. If you didn't listen to that episode, go back and listen. It's still timely, and I thought it was a great episode, by the way. Well, the update is that there is no update because the only race that's really still up for grabs is Senate District 26, which was the main event between Phil Berger and Sam Page, and there is no resolution so far.
No, not yet. I mean, my prediction is coming true. The winner is the lawyers.
Yeah, they're about to get paid, from what I understand. Page has widened his lead from 2 votes to 23 as of Friday because of provisional ballots being counted.
Waiting on military, right?
Yeah, and I think Flint had told us that they didn't think there were many of those, so I don't know if it'll be enough. After that count, they'll go to a machine recount, from what I understand from the Under the Dome podcast this week. And then there's like a sample recount, hand rate recount. They don't do the whole. It could be a few more months before we know the outcome. So stay tuned, I guess. You have any inkling on what's going to happen there?
None. Less than none. I mean, election night was kind of shocking all over the country in different places, and that was our North Carolina. Well, when I say shocker, just such an unusual race that brought so much national media attention, camped out in.
President weighed in on it.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't Charlotte or I mean, it was unusual. So
if you've ever been to Rockingham County, you would not expect it to be the hotbed of political.
It's a pretty peaceful, not tremendously New York Times-y kind of place.
And we talked about, like I said, at length about what this means for state employees and what it means for the legislature in last week's episode. So Governor Stein seems to have seized the opportunity by releasing a critical needs budget this week on Monday, kind of out of the blue, right?
I haven't talked to anybody who knew that was coming. So, I
mean, I think that everyone would agree that we do have critical needs, especially for state employees and retirees. Well, we would say that, but
so, there's the Medicaid rebase money that the legislature had already been talking about and dealt with it in part. And everyone knew that at some later time, DHHS would be back saying, listen, we need more just for rebase. And rebase is just if you keep everything at current levels of funding in terms of what they're reimbursing doctors and other providers for the care of the folks on the plan. And sure enough, HHS said, oh, we really have to have this money. And it's not insignificant.
Yeah, $319 million for Medicaid rebase. And is that, I guess that's a direct result of all the changes in the big, beautiful bill, or is...
So Secretary Songbai was asked that question during the press conference on Monday, and his response was like, and of course I'm paraphrasing, but he said, yeah, kind of in part, because you know what's coming and you have to go ahead and deal with the providers and what your agreements with them are going to be. And he does attribute it to a lot of the changes in the big, beautiful bill. I do want to point out that the governor's critical needs budget he put out and proposed on Monday is literally just a proposal. I don't want anyone hearing this and thinking, oh, wow, so that was his budget.
Yeah.
This is a really odd thing, right? Mm-hmm. Because we didn't have a budget. Part of Governor Stein's point appeared to be, hey, let's not forget we didn't have a budget.
Yeah.
So let's address these things and then come back and have a budget for the coming year. He was just saying, as I understood it, the list he gave are the things that if you didn't have a budget from last year, and we didn't, that you at least had to cover these certain items.
Yeah.
Or else North Carolina was going to go that much further backwards.
Do you think it's kind of like setting the tone as we head into the short session?
One would think that he's just making a statement. And in part, I get that very much because we've talked about on this podcast, we don't want the legislature to come in this year and say, here's your 2 or 3% election year raise and forget that last year happened, or the year we're currently in that ends July 1 happened, because it did, and it happened with no money. So let's go ahead and address that too. So it needs to be more like a 5-6% raise.
So another part of the budget is something that came up through our podcast with Secretary Dismukes. The $82 million shortfall that DAC had last year, and he proposed a non-recurring funding for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's just going to happen again next year, right? And without a...
Yeah. And Secretary Dismukes did a good job laying out with us and with the legislature and committee that they're having to literally pay bills with lapsed salary money, that they're having to not pay some bills because they don't have the money to pay them. And the state not being able to pay its bills, not because they went and bought something, super cool for the office, but because the money's just not there. That's a problem that we've been trying to draw attention to as well. The agencies are not properly funded. We can't say it enough times. I'm going to say it again. Since 2009, according to information on the General Assembly's website, the population in North Carolina has increased by 2 million people. Agency budgets have not increased to reflect that, because that's 19% growth, and agency budgets haven't increased like that.
And she kind of covered this as well in the podcast. But if you think about it, like, they have such a high vacancy rate, their funding is even more dire. Thank God they have these lab salaries money to
and aging
spend on
facilities.
Like, what if every job was filled? They'd have an even bigger deficit.
Well, and that's the point. They can't.
Yeah.
They can't fill them, and they're not the only agency, though. And I do think in this whole lap salary discussion, that's a point we've tried to make, is that if these agencies can't fill these jobs. They can't fill all of them. If they could find people who would take them at the salaries they're at, we couldn't afford to run the agency and do the work of the public. So we have a problem. And I get it. I get where Stein was coming from. Obviously, that's going to be pretty much dead on arrival at the legislature. And I think the legislature kind of indicated that.
So let's get down into the nitty-gritty of the proposal, even though, as you just said, it's just a jumping off point. It's not like these numbers are set in stone or anything. But the crisis budget did call for a 10% raise for correctional officers, law enforcement, youth counselors, nurses, and behavioral tech in state-run facilities. So I guess that's DHHS facilities. And then a 6.5% raise for juvenile court counselors, probation and parole officers. 2.5% for pretty much everyone else, all the other state employees.
Yeah,
and then,
that's as they've gotten really sick of being called by everybody, the other state employees, and it's always a much lower number, so it sounds like the afterthought. It pretty much is.
He did have a package for teachers as well, increased starting teacher pay by 13% to at least $49,500. 5.8% average raise for experienced teachers, support personnel, psychologists, pathologists, and audiologists. 2.5% raise for principals, and restoring extra pay for teachers who have master's degrees. It also included a 2.5% one-time bonus for retirees.
And by the way, the governor's office in that press conference said the same thing that Governor Cooper used to say in his budget and the legislature likes to say in theirs, which was a cost of living adjustment for retirees. Let's talk about this.
One-time cost of living adjustment. That's like saying sweet and sour.
But during the press conference, they didn't say one-time cost of living adjustment. They just said cost of living adjustment. I'm just sick of it. Use other words, y'all. Just say a one-time bonus.
Or they'll say cost of living supplement or something like that,
Yeah, but let's, cost of living adjustment has a specific meaning. The cost of living went up, you adjusted pay accordingly. If it's one time, it's not addressing the cost of living.
Yeah.
So just stop doing it, y'all. Please, all of y'all.
Semantics.
It matters. I mean, it really upsets retirees. They see the words cost of living, especially cost of living adjustment or COLA. They'll sometimes just use the acronym. And they think that that's a thing, that they're going to get an actual adjustment to the base amount. You're not. They're not trying to recommend that. And so, anyway, that's upsetting. This critical needs budget, I don't think those places in state government that he's trying to suggest increasing salaries by a lot more than most state jobs. I don't think that that's an incorrect thing. He pointed out we're 49th in the nation on teacher pay, and we're 49th on correctional personnel pay. So you've clearly there's a problem there, and it's a more dire problem than some others. Everybody needs a raise. What I think would probably go over better with, quote, the other state employees is if you would just say, we need to adjust those salaries.
Mm-hmm.
We need to do salary adjustments, not raises.
Yeah.
Because he pointed out you could raise those jobs by 10% and you maybe move 1 or 2 slots up from the bottom because we're that far behind. That means we need to take a really more serious approach at what the salaries are in each agency and do adjustments.
And Secretary Dismukes pointed that out when she said, I think the starting pay for correctional officers is what, like $37,000 or something? And that's well behind any of our neighbors, you know. And you even said like the local.
Well, that's where you're really behind the detention centers.
Yeah.
You can get so much more to work there.
You might have said this, but does this list that we are 49th on take into consideration cost of living per state as well?
No, I don't think you'd have a way of doing that. So,
because in my head, it also just came up of in certain states, it does cost a lot more to live in those states in comparison to North Carolina. So
well,
it would make sense for their pay to be
higher,
I
get what you're saying.
But
which is why a good thing to do is look at the Southeast.
Yeah.
And then.
Well, it's like when we were looking at that map and I was like, look, West Virginia is way higher than we are. Like, that's exactly what I mean, you know.
But it doesn't cost you near as much to live in West Virginia. So, but if you look at the Southeast, we're really behind people.
Mm-hmm.
So we know it's not just about the fact that it costs more to live in New York State or something like that. If you look at those states, my goodness, it's probably twice at least what our correctional personnel are getting. But I think that, again, the best way to look at that would be suggest salary adjustments, there, because everybody needs a significant raise. But I think people get it. And it also would be helpful, by the way, start the press conference with most state employees rather than at the very end of a long list of big numbers, put a small number and say, and other state employees will get this.
Yeah.
I think that would help too, to not make people feel so left behind. I think people get it, that their job may not be life risking to them or the public.
Or it may not be
to have those jobs vacant.
As hard to fill as
right. Yeah. Now, I will say what's not being factored into any of this, and it's something this podcast has been trying to hone in on. We've got agencies, and Secretary of State Elaine Marshall, we've talked about this, made such a good point in the legislature. She's got positions she can't fill that need more money to make them competitive, but bring in a lot of money to the state. I think that's a critical need. So it's interesting to me.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Causey, the same thing about fraud investigators.
Mm-hmm.
There are positions that are critical in that they would bring in revenue, and we've got to do that.
So I had a question about the retirement part of this whole budget. Is it time for us to start talking about any funding we get from the legislature will likely be one-time bonuses?
I mean,
because there's just no way they're ever going to give a real cost of living adjustment, right?
Right. So we talked a few weeks ago about how the Retirement System Board of Trustees had met and they did not recommend a COLA. And the reason they weren't recommending a COLA is that despite really good investment gains the past fiscal year, the system is not in a position yet to afford the COLAs because the unfunded liability keeps getting bigger. Basically, y'all, we have less people putting into the system right now than we have drawing retirement check. So that means the amount of profit they're going to have to make off of the investments, to put it, the most clear way I can think to put it, is going to have to be pretty extraordinary.
A cost of living adjustment would cost 12 times more than a bonus for the legislature to put in. But if the system can afford it by itself, that's more
They
likely.
Still have to get the legislature to approve it. But yeah, you're right. If the legislature was funding it out of the general fund, they would insist on multiplying the actual cost by 12. Yeah, if it was sitting there, they had enough money in the system and gains, the board could recommend the COLA and the legislature could bless it. Or the legislature could say, we're going to take our employer contribution down greatly, and we'd rather do that than have you give COLAs. I mean, this is just the reality of what can happen. Okay. So that's something we've been publicly as an organization trying to let everybody know if this were to happen, it would be absolutely wrong to do to retirees. But let's face facts. We've got, in terms of just for the actives, what we had in the House budget was similar, pretty good raises for the pockets that Governor Stein just identified, law enforcement, teachers, things like that. And the same thing for the rest of state employees, 2.5. They also said they wanted to cut 20% of the 3,000 vacant jobs in state government. And I'm not sure why they didn't just say, we want to cut 600 jobs out of state government, even though we don't have any more state employees than we had in 2009, despite 2 million more people living here in the state. We'll cut 600 more of the people giving service to the public. So if that is the stance they're taking on the active workforce serving the public, the taxpayers, I am greatly concerned about what they're going to want to do if there are a lot of investment gains, how the General Assembly is going to look at what they want to do with that. I think they're going to want to take burden off of the general fund. Right, the employer contributions. So we have to make sure we fight for the rights of those retirees who spent their whole career thinking they wouldn't become forgotten.
Yeah.
And the system they financed with the 6% of their check every month wouldn't become something that people treated like some sort of gift to them. They funded it. It's not a gift.
And at the same time, when you cut jobs, you're cutting possible people to fund retirement for current retirees, right?
Yeah. Well, not that I would ever argue state jobs should exist to fund the retirement system. However, the bottom line is when you already have not even remotely kept up with the population growth in terms of the people to serve that population, that's a no-brainer. You need more state employees. The silver lining is your employer contribution would likely come down what you had to put in to keep that retirement system going, because you would have that 6% out of the salary of those people you definitely need to serve the taxpayers.
So what was the reaction from the other side on this budget? Have you heard anything
from the General Assembly?
Yeah.
Just that, they feel, hey, our individual budgets kind of pointed out the same.
Yeah.
I think the biggest discrepancy they had between the critical needs budget Stein just proposed and what their budgets had been is this fight over Medicaid.
Yeah, I see here House Speaker Destin Hall's spokeswoman, Demi Dowdy, said that teachers and law enforcement receive less in this budget than the House has already passed. We urge the Senate to join us in passing these raises for all of our state employees.
The House did, they're not inaccurate. The House did propose bigger numbers in some cases on the law enforcement piece, pretty similar numbers on the other pieces, including most state employees or other state employees. Now, that being said, we can't forget that the House also said, hey, cut 600 jobs. So I don't know how the people left standing who are serving so many, several million more North Carolinians can do that. They're already doing the jobs, of 2, sometimes 3 people. We're talking about making that worse. I don't see how this helps. It doesn't help state employees. It's dreadful. But I don't see how it helps the public. That would be a really bad move.
So do you think they will pass something in this short session?
I think there will be a budget.
Okay.
I do. I think that, and I do think there was some sentiment, and, no one knows for sure, but that some of the primary races for incumbents, there was an anti-incumbent sentiment of some kind. And I don't think it helped. It never helps in an election not to have a budget. But now we're in a war or a conflict or whatever we're calling it today. Yeah. And so that will have effects on federal spending, depending on how long this lasts. And it will also impact the market. And then that impacts retirees.
And gas prices will impact the economy in general.
And we're running a lot of, and we already had DOT saying we're having to spend some of our lapsed salary money just to keep everything rolling down the road. I do think it's more complicated. As complicated as last year was, and in fairness to the legislature, that was really tough to write a budget with all these very different things happening. They had just expanded Medicaid, and the big, beautiful bill basically, gutted some of the money they would get that way back, that states were used to getting back. And then they were facing a really different situation in availability. Mm-hmm. And it's all a trickle-down thing. If the feds cut back greatly, it affects the state, and then that affects the local.
So we'll see what happens with that. Another topic this week, you were invited onto Capitol Tonight on Spectrum to talk about all the new providers that are coming aboard onto Lantern programs.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much to Treasurer Briner's team, Thomas Friedman, Loretta Benini, and the team of the health plan for including us in that. But we did get a chance to sit with them, and as they talked about the real progress they're making with Lantern, which, by the way, just to recap, is a program where state employees can get free surgical procedures with qualified providers, but they have to agree. They have to agree basically not to rip the state off and charge too much. And so that's how it can be free.
And it's like volume for them as opposed to...
Yeah. So if you're a provider and you're interested in doing reasonable, decent deal with the state health plan, or with Lantern in this case, because they're using this third party to kind of be the clearinghouse to make sure they meet standards that are of quality, but also keep prices low.
Yeah, so Novant Health joined on November 4th, and it's one of the large providers in North Carolina. Then we also have Emerge Ortho, which is pretty popular in the Triangle, and I guess all over the state, from what I understand. And then
they're expanding for sure.
Ortho Carolina, they're a Charlotte area provider that has a large surgical network. So that's progress.
It's huge progress. And they have so many more people signing up to use Lantern than they had even thought they would. So it's a win-win. It's a win for the employees, and it's a win for the bottom line for the state health plan, which affects everything.
Yeah. So we need to solicit some testimonials from anyone in our membership who've gone through it.
Yeah, if you have used Lantern, if you've called Lantern, you need a surgery, and you've called them since the beginning of the year, and you have an experience with it, let us know. We've got the email for the podcast.
Podcast@scenic.org. We'll put it in the scoop. I'd like to hear some stories, maybe some good experiences or something we need to look into. So,
and if you want to know more about Lantern, go to the state health plan website and you can read a lot about it. It's really interesting. I didn't know when they first said it. The state health plan staff first said they were looking at it. I just wasn't sure how that was going to go over because people hear the word free. And they think, I don't want anything you're trying to give me for free. It'll be substandard. Yeah. But it really does not look like that. I mean, obviously, if you've got an entire healthcare system that's signed on, you can have anybody in that system.
Yeah. It seems counterintuitive. It really does, even for me. But once you hear more about it, you understand.
Think how many decades, though, it took to condition us all to think the more we paid for something, the better it was.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Well, I think that's all I have for news. Let's go to the Gen Z moment.
We got a couple Gen Z moments today, actually. So first, we'll talk a little bit about a study that I found talking about how Gen Z is changing the meaning of independent voter. So in a podcast from NPR, they cite a poll done by Gallup, which is a nonpartisan analysis of critical global issues, in which they talk about how in their most recent poll, and by the way, this was done right after the primaries, this article was released. In a most recent poll, 45% of American voters identify as political independents. More than 56% of Gen Z say they identify as independent, which, according to these political analysts, is very different from what they've seen in the past. And they, in past years, have seen it as very much of a 30% split, roughly three ways, of 30% roughly being Democrat, Republicans, and independent. And it's kind of showing that my generation does not have the same allegiance to political parties.
No, but the political party, I'm telling you, they don't get it yet. They still think you do. They think everybody does.
Yeah. It's being reflected in the polls, and it's showing that our generation is more likely to vote off of issues, not just a D or an R next to a name. And then they also mention in here how we're not running to a third party. We're not looking for a third party.
Yeah.
We want to see ourselves, because it even mentions in here, and I've kind of talked about this, especially with the Epstein files in the past few weeks, it's talking about how our generation views both parties and all the parties essentially as corrupt. And they even cite how, there's nothing in the U.S. Constitution about political parties, and George Washington used to warn about parties, saying it's going to be a problem if people start fighting and dividing themselves into parties, which I think we've seen a lot, which I think is probably contributing to the fact that Gen Zs want to be seen as independent. And we're not saying no, I want a third party or a green party. We're like, no, just leave me alone.
So Gen Z does what? They look at the news and decide, who they want to go with? Or
do you think that means they're they're registered unaffiliated, or do they usually pick a side when they...
I think typically a lot of us are registered unaffiliated, and I think that's kind of what they're going by with this poll. But it also talks about how the thing that's really uniting this generation and this generational factor is the fact that a lot of us were young teens or children during the Great Recession, and we've only really known periods of economic uncertainty since we've come into our adult age. Of most of us became adults during COVID, and that became a big thing of economic uncertainty as well, with jobs and not being able to go out and do much of anything during that time. And it's really just showing how little faith we have in our government to fix these issues.
Yeah, I think that's sad too, because I think that there is a lack of just patriotism in general and faith in our system. You know, I think that I've always thought that, you know, America is good at its core, and that...
I think people can think that, because personally, I do love America. I love living here. I love that I do have the rights that I have. However, I can still not have the faith in the government that I should have.
That's kind of what the whole idea of coming here and establishing a government was, is that it's okay to say, yeah, the government stinks, or I don't like the government, if that's how you're feeling at the time, because they couldn't say that or be who they wanted to be.
I can still say I love living here and I love the opportunities and the rights that I have without saying that I support what our government is doing.
But you know, I kind of wonder, though, at the end of the day, is it our government or the people controlling the ones who are representing us in our government?
Yeah.
What are we really against, right? Like, as a nation,
for
things
me,
are changing so much. And
I think that at our core, we've forgotten that the government is us, you know, that we are the government. Like,
well, I mean, after Citizens United, not really.
But we could be. Theoretically, we should be.
Again, I think that we're just kind of...
I think there's a lot of confusion amongst all the generations these days.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay, so look at retirees. Retirees, they grew up and then worked their careers with a certain relationship of trust with the government, who was their employer, that this is why retirees are so especially upset. We see it on our social media. They're like 10 times more upset than anybody else all the time.
Yeah.
Because they really had a deeply held trust and belief in their government as an employer, keeping implicit promises. They didn't have to be written out. They believed they'd keep them. And I think Gen X, our generation, has already been like, oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
So another thing that this kind of talks about is, just seeing this now, it talks about how we are a generation that grew up with increased rates of school shootings, increased rates of general political violence, that we were kind of thrust into no matter what. We didn't get the option of being ignorant to it. Nope. And it's kind of like my generation, we're too focused on everything. People say that we're unaware. A lot of older generations will say that we're unaware of things that are going on. Our problem is we are too aware. We grew up in the age of the internet, so we see every political problem that is happening thrust into our faces, whether it be like different immigration movements, environmental movements, different things like that. It's thrown all at us. And so if anything, I think a big thing that makes my generation more independent is that we are too aware of everything going on all over the world.
Yeah.
That we're just like, well, there's no right answer to anything.
We didn't have a fraction of the news y'all have, and that was probably best.
Yeah.
For our mental health. But, you know, I do think these are interesting issues moving forward. I think how the government of any level of it, whether it's local, state, federal, how it interacts with its employees, because that level of trust is going to need to be there to keep people. And obviously, and that may be a decision that's ultimately made. We don't care if people stay. We'll be a training ground. We don't care.
No.
I think that's bad for taxpayers. I think we've made that pretty abundantly clear.
And on a lighter note, something that my generation, particularly I care about, because I'm a big concert goer. We've talked about this in the past.
Yeah.
Massive lawsuit with Ticketmaster and Live Nation, and them being monopolized, basically monopolizing the music industry and the concert industry. That's where...
I heard about that.
Yeah. So there was a massive lawsuit that included, I think, 30 states as well as the Department of Justice. And the Department of Justice has recently decided that they're kind of done fighting and they're able to reach a settlement.
Okay.
North Carolina is not done fighting, along with 25 other states. They're not done.
Yeah, so that's how
They're
I
not that.
saw it. I saw something about Jeff Jackson and
Yes.
attorney.
He spoke about how him and I think 25 other states at least and the District of Columbia are still fighting because they don't agree to those settlement terms. They're not doing it. So I don't know. What is you guys' thoughts on?
Well, the Ticketmaster fight has been going on forever.
Yes.
And I just have to call back to the Pearl Jam, Eddie Vedder fights of my youth.
Yeah.
It was cool. It kind of was like the first salvo in this war against Ticketmaster. Ticketmaster is a monopoly. It seems like it was even more back then, although now they have Live Nation and they kind of merged and it's the whole thing. So basically, I wonder though, are concerts less popular now?
No.
Like, I don't know. It seemed like everybody was going to concerts were the thing you did, like the entertainment.
Well, I don't think concerts have as much money for them.
Well, concerts are still very popular, but it's also the dynamic and the etiquette has changed because there are people who are now going to concerts that didn't get to go like when they were younger because of COVID. And so concerts have changed and the etiquette has changed. It's not that people want the etiquette, it's changed, but I've seen so many videos of people online talking about concerts they've gone to and they've been in the pit or on the floor.
Yeah.
And how some of the people who are younger going to some of these concerts and getting those kinds of seats are just treating the workers at these concerts atrociously. They're treating people who are also attending the concerts terribly. And they just don't understand basic concert etiquette. Recently, last year, I went to a concert where there were seats. There was a kid in front of me. I don't care how old you are. If you were 13 years old, stood on the seat in front of me. I could not see the entire concert. Couldn't see. I got to see the openers and got called out by the openers for being the only person in the section.
Well, I think we have an etiquette problem in most places now. But about the Ticketmaster issue itself, so this is consumer rights that are being... And I think good. I mean, I want people to fight for their rights as consumers, but I have read a lot about that, and I have thought about that and about the TikTok fight from before. We have to figure out how to harness that kind of energy around
something that matters.
Healthcare.
I'll tell you what. If you can get my generation focused on one thing,
y'all are done.
Then they will destroy whatever it is. Which I think is one of the reasons why this Ticketmaster fight is so strong. Because my generation, we want to go to the concerts, we want to enjoy ourselves.
Yeah.
But when Ticketmaster is pricing a single ticket for a concert at $1,000,
listen,
we can't afford that. And it's crazy because a lot of these artists, they want to do something and they're trying to do things to prevent price gouging and prevent some of these crazy, ridiculous prices. Noah Khan, he had a lot of things set up for his pre-sale for his tour that he just did.
I mean...
And it still
they don't want to do too much, though, or else they'd just find a different way to promote their concerts, or maybe just go play a different venue.
Well, the thing
That's
is
what Pearl Jam did.
Ticketmaster and Live Nation own most of these venues.
Yeah.
We can't...
They don't own clubs, though. I mean...
Well, okay, we're right back around to healthcare. Because, see, that's what's happening with the consolidation of healthcare.
Yeah.
I mean, interesting. But again, it comes back to why are things happening? Yeah. They're happening because of the increased coalescence of power by...
billionaires.
Corporate behemoths, So at the end of the day, all of it's going to connect for people eventually. Fight the power. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, good. I think that's a good topic. Maybe we'll fight about that again. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying
Gen Z can't have their moment without you saying they're wrong.
I'm all for the Ticketmaster fight too. Well, this week's question of the week, since it is approaching next week, I know you guys have heard of St. Patrick's Day, but have you heard of St. Jonathan's Day?
Oh, my word.
It's the day before, and it's my birthday, March 16th.
I'm pretty sure calling yourself a saint is...
Yeah, that's probably wrong. Probably bad. But in honor of St. Patrick's Day...
John's wacky weird question of the week.
All right.
Whenever Suzanne's not here, I feel like...
It's off the rails.
We are. The ADHD controls the room.
Oops.
So what's your favorite St. Patrick's Day tradition? And I'll go first. My favorite is when they turn the river in Chicago green.
You just took mine.
Oh, no.
I've never seen it in person.
So I was there like a few weeks after, and it was still green.
That's
I
awesome.
remember that.
I think it's neat.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't apparently hurt anything.
Yeah.
The Savannah St. Patty's Parade, I also think is super cool. Well, Savannah just has a huge St. Patrick's Parade. Oh my gosh, yes. It's
cool.
The whole town gets into it. The number of people in Savannah for the St. Patrick's Parade is 4 times the number of residents of Savannah. That's how many people go in for that thing.
I've never
huge. It's a massive thing.
Seems like I would have heard of that.
Huge Irish population.
Very cool. What about you, Sam?
Typically, me and my friends will do a bar crawl downtown Raleigh.
Okay.
It's like $20-$30 for a ticket, and then you get discounted drinks and you can just hang out. They have a big like music and just fun times downtown, but I won't be here this year, so.
Do you drink green beer?
No.
Yuck.
No.
Yeah.
No. My friend, I was talking to her and she's like, nope, won't do it. We'll never do it. I'm like, well, personally, I agree.
So when you were in school, did you pinch people who didn't have green on?
No.
No?
No.
I've gotten pinched several times for not wearing.
I got pinched, but I wasn't the one pinching. And I would typically just wear socks. So I'd be like, haha, now I get to pinch you back.
Yeah. I forgot more than once. And it's kind of funny because my birthday is the day before. I should have known, right? I was too busy celebrating.
Celebrating yourself.
Yeah. So everyone enjoy St. Jonathan's Day. And
oh my gosh, stop saying it. I'm pretty sure it's sacrilegious.
It might be at this point.
And have a great week.